how do you see the world of AI reshaping careers?
If you invest in yourself, you invest in your understanding, you invest in learning, you maintain agility and constantly looking at where the next thing is going, that's going to be a growth story.
What are some of the game-changing trends that you're seeing in AI that our customers are dabbling with?
There's not a company that we've talked to that isn't trying to rethink how they engage with their consumers using AI. Rediscovery of customer care and creating new kinds of magic in customer care.
Again, when you look at your clients and your conversations, are there some lessons in terms of how have those pilots scaled, or why have the pilots not worked?
But I do think there's a lot of risk in organizations to get stuck in that pilot arena. There's a lot of risk in organizations to get stuck in the prioritization of use cases. Pick a really good, really hard problem, get after it, and demonstrate the value.
You want to talk a little bit about this journey of Chat PwC?
We were able to put that into our environment, put that data into our environment in a controlled, structured way. That's the kind of thing that the Chat PwC platform allows us to do. And it is now one of the most widely deployed and most consistently applied set of tools across the PwC network.
Hey Joe, welcome to PwC in India.
Thanks so much, Manpreet.
It's an absolute joy to get you here in the middle of as I would say, or we would say in India, the AI capital of the world. There's so much that's happening here, there's so much of energy, and it'll be great to hear your global perspective as well on this.
I am thrilled to be here. I've already discovered a lot of that energy and magic that's happening here, so it's glad to be with you.
So Joe, for everyone here, Joe is our Global Chief AI Officer. He's the man who's bringing AI to life for each one of us as we wake up, as we work, as we think, learn, and reimagine the possibilities. So thank you so much for that, Joe.
You bet.
But Joe, before we dive into the world of AI, I think a little bit of a personal question. You've been in the world of digital technology. I mean, I'm sure, since the advent of internet, but when is it that you really thought this is not just one more technology, but something more profound that's going to change the rules of the game? Not just a force multiplier, but something that's going to rewire everything.
So I would go back to the launch of GPT-3.5 back in November of 22. Many of us paid attention to it because at that time a lot of people were on holiday break, and all of a sudden you're reading the stories of what's happening. And when you watch that technology work, even explored it yourself, you could see so clearly that something different was happening. But fast forward to January, February, and all of the CEOs of the world and the thought leaders of the world are out in Davos. And I got a text at about 4 in the morning from our senior partner at the time saying, we need to talk about that AI thing, some words to that effect. And that was the moment that you realized this technology thing that was so interesting and so fascinating that we were kind of exploring individually had become the conversation that year among the world's business leaders and community leaders and government leaders. They saw what we all see today, that it is changing and has the promise to change everything.
No, fantastic. For me personally, it was when I had a trip to Europe and I was panicking that we hadn't planned enough to the nth mile, and my son kept telling me, saying, don't worry, we've got 3.5, they'll help you. So, no, fantastic. But really, the first block, we're a large country with 1 billion people, young median age, and a lot of tech orientation. But how do you see the world of AI reshaping careers? That'll be a good one to get perspective.
Well, and it's one, I always say I'm an optimist, and I'm of course a pragmatic optimist, but I think ultimately what is so important for people to understand is that AI it's a growth story. It's a growth story for businesses, but it's also a growth story for individuals. The key from my perspective is the ability for AI to actually empower all of us to do more and work differently. And that creates all kinds of variations in the way that we can make this come to life. Most of us started our career, I won't date you, Manpreet, but I'll say when I started my career, there was a lot of talk about how many hours you ground out in the consulting and professional services business. And that was a mark of accomplishment, right? How many hours did you put in? Today, the conversation is much more about how much value did you create? What were the outcomes that you unlocked? And if you think about that simple shift over my career, which is long, but it's not all of human history, you think about that simple shift, that's the shift that I think AI represents for careers today. I used to say, and I still say, that there's jobs and tech jobs in the past, and now there's just jobs. All of us are going to have to identify the important role that AI is going to play in the way that we deliver. And that means upskilling ourselves, it means investing in understanding, it means recognizing that none of us, maybe very few of us, will know exactly where everything's going to lead and what the opportunity really means. But the ability to experiment and innovate and create more with AI than without is the opportunity that's in front of all of us.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, thankfully you are an optimist and you're sounding, you're very encouraging to the audience as well. I personally think the same. The other day in the newspaper it was saying AI will only expedite the path of this large consulting firm, consultants working in consulting firms to partnerships, because it's all about delivering value. And so absolutely.
That's right. And the other stat and it comes from our own studies, we had an estimate that about $15 trillion of global GDP growth will be unlocked by 2030 as AI creates new businesses and new business models. Well, GDP growth is people growth. That is where people participate in the economies, and that opportunity for participation means more people can come along. Now, there's a lot that happens in between here and there, and disruption and movement of roles and tasks and responsibilities. But I've always found over my career, and I don't think AI is going to be any different, that if you invest in yourself, you invest in your understanding, you invest in learning, you maintain agility and constantly looking at where the next thing is going, that's going to be a growth story.
But that's a lot of hard work when you have to drive that for a firm as big as ours, with so many different people, with so many different skills, with so many different job descriptions. Do you want to share how you're trying to push that agenda and get this as a truly AI first culture within the firm?
Yeah, I'll share a couple pieces on that. I mean, for the listeners that know the firm, we're 375,000 people around the world operating in 149 territories. We operate some of the most significant professional services businesses on the planet in our assurance and our tax, our consulting, our deals business. That opportunity creates a true sense of urgency on making sure we're positioning this business for the future. And I share a lot. The fact that is inspiring to me is the age of the firm, if you will. We are a 170-year-old firm that has reinvented ourselves time and time and time again. And it's a privilege, because the ability to reinvent is driven by the fact that we're out in the market with our clients, seeing and talking and engaging and helping them solve side by side all the complex problems they see, which gives us a bird's eye view into what's coming. And so as you think about what's coming, you obviously immediately go to what will AI do? And to your question, what's the strategy for us? The strategy is to embed AI responsibly and thoughtfully into everything that we do, to make sure that our people are equipped with the very best capability and skills that they need and the tools at their fingertips in order to make that happen, to unlock innovation so that we can rethink the services that we're delivering today and what that looks like and how we create value for clients tomorrow, and to do all of that on a shared technology architecture and set of capabilities that helps us grow the footprint of the firm from a technology perspective. And I suspect that there are a lot of organizations out there that know PwC that would be shocked to see how forward-leaning our people are every day in the application of AI. I couldn't be more proud of our 375,000 people.
And I can vet that from an India perspective, Joe, with 70% of our people being active users of Chat PwC.
Yes.
The adoption is really, really high, and thank you for all that you're driving for us. Moving the conversation to a little bit of from a client lens, right? We work for different sectors, different clients. What are some of the, and you're constantly talking with them in terms of thinking through what AI can do for their business. What are some of the game-changing trends that you're seeing in AI that our customers are dabbling with?
One that leaps off the page all the time is there's not a company that we've talked to that isn't trying to rethink how they engage with their consumers using AI. And today we see that in the form of new chatbots. But tomorrow we're going to see it in avatars and service delivery and conversational AI that's going to help all of us have a better relationship with the companies that we do business with, and help those companies have a much better relationship with their customers and satisfy them in much more rapid and much more clear ways. So I think that's a big trend in the rediscovery of customer care and creating new kinds of magic in customer care. The other one is in the employee relationships. Most large organizations that manage tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of employees, and some organizations on the planet manage 1 million plus employees. Those organizations need to serve their employees. They need to make sure they're getting the best of their benefits. They need to make sure that they understand their rights, their obligations, policies, procedures. There's a lot of work that goes on doing that, and sometimes that can feel like a labyrinth in organizations. Just about every organization we're talking to is trying to make that experience better for their employees, and I think that's another really important one, two that jump to mind.
I think that's a brilliant point you make around customers. I mean, especially when I look at, I've got 2 kids, a 14-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, and the way they consume information and the way they play with the LLMs, I actually still think there's a massive opportunity for companies in terms of how they're interacting and offering to the wider consumers. The customers moving faster than large companies right now, I would say.
I couldn't agree with that statement more. And I think for all of the right conversations that we're having and we should have about what responsible use looks like and deploying in thoughtful ways and making sure we're being thoughtful on compliance and protecting data, et cetera, the reality is that most of the population of consumers are ready to go fast. They're ready to engage. And so that speed, that pressure, doesn't negate the need to go in a secure and responsible way, of course, but it does require us to execute those answers very, very quickly because the demand is clearly there.
There's a lot of conversation about agents.
Yes.
And 2025 being the year of AI agents.
You're the agent.
And it's a very interesting opportunity with the possibilities that agents can do. You have thousands of workforce and you have hundreds of agents doing a lot of piece of work. I mean, how are you seeing clients balance the benefits of autonomous agents and the responsibility and the human oversight that's possibly needed for things to not completely go wrong? How are you seeing that balance come to life?
Look, when we started the conversation around AI, many of us would talk about the human in the loop. And then you have an agent conversation and you start to ask the question, well, what loop are we talking about and where is the human? And I think this is going to be a challenge for organizations to get this right. But from my perspective, it comes back to the foundations of responsible use. Are we acting responsibly and ethically with respect to our stakeholders, respect to our investors, respect to our communities, the governments, as well as our customers and employees? Are we treating their information properly? Are we making it clear who they're working with and who they're not working with? As you get to agentic frameworks inside organizations, I think what you're going to see is that the agents are actually going to help most of the humans do a much better job than they could do without the agents. We've talked a lot about anomaly detection, for example. We've talked a lot about compliance obligations and how do you get insights around compliance obligations. Those are hard jobs today. They are hard jobs for humans to do today because the organizations and the individuals are dealing with such massive amounts of data. Agents allow those individuals to get much better insights across the organization, which will actually empower the individual that has to make that judgment. And I think at the end, we have to make sure that every agentic system includes the safeguards and the capabilities for humans to make judgments and ensure we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, the amount of data that the companies, the petabytes worth of data that the companies are now generating, there's no way on hell that a human being can reconcile all of that. So there'll be a lot of unknowns that will come to the table when agents begin to start helping out. There's this big conversation. In fact, the joke that used to go around in India, and I'm sure around the world as well, is everybody dabbled with so many AI pilots that possibly the entire aviation industry does not have as many pilots as the AI pilots that have been done. So, the journey from being in pilots and reimagining the art of possible to be able to scaling it. Again, when you look at your clients and your conversations, are there some lessons in terms of how have those pilots scaled or why have the pilots not worked?
I think there's a ton of lessons there. One of the things we've talked about during my time that I've really enjoyed in India is you have a scale story that's different than a lot of places in the world.
You've got a billion people.
You've got a billion people, and every time you have to figure out how to serve a billion people, you have to have a scale opportunity.
You have to have a scale approach. Leaders come back and say India is the use case capital of the world for a lot of right macros at this point in time.
And it makes sense because you have to confront the realities of what delivery at scale means, whereas many of these pilots didn't have to confront the reality of what delivery at scale means. So I'll come back to a PwC story. When we started to look at the power of AI just to help embed in the way that we deliver and serve our clients, we asked our people to help identify the places where AI could be helpful. And that identification process yielded 3,000 use cases in about 30 days. And I've been managing use cases and programs and transformations for a long time. There's no way to practically address 3,000 use cases. You have to start to look at where the patterns show themselves. So to me, that lesson now leads into all of these pilots that we're doing. 1,000 pilots that serve 5 people each or 10 people each or $100 of revenue or cost is never going to give you the move the needle impact that is the promise of AI. You have to be looking at where are the implications in real value creation or value at risk and driving your use cases toward those opportunities. And the beauty of it is, because you have this platform model that sits underneath this, as you start to tackle those issues, you create the pathways to tackle the next ones. But I do think there's a lot of risk in organizations to get stuck in that pilot arena. There's a lot of risk in organizations to get stuck in the prioritization of use cases. Pick a really good, really hard problem, get after it, and demonstrate the value.
So value focus, then just AI for the heck of AI focus.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I push you to give us one, you don't need to name the customer, but one large scale implementation that sort of inspired you?
Yeah, honestly, there's been a few, and it's fun to watch. So we've seen a few in supply chain. The resiliency of supply chains is a big issue, right? You've got not only regulatory and compliance and supply chains that have all kinds of risks across them, but you have how do you optimize them? And we're seeing some really, really interesting applications in large multinational companies on how they apply AI to unlock that kind of complexity to focus in on the right thing. The other thing that we're seeing is organizations, and this is I'll describe it as the nerve centers and heartbeats of a lot of organizations. It's the finance and the operating functions that run those organizations. And you and I were talking about the petabytes of data and how overwhelming that is. If you're in a finance or an operating role in most organizations, you are overwhelmed by data every day. The ability that is now starting to show itself in the number of clients that jump to mind that are saying, I need to do this in a way that isn't about generating dashboards or analysis or doing research and then sending an email. I need to have conversational capability with the systems that underlie my company, and I need to give people the ability to have those conversations to do the analysis that's necessary. And by the way, I need to do it in a way that I have high confidence in the results that comes out of that analysis. There's a number of companies that I won't declare anybody done there, but I will say there are a number of companies moving in really interesting directions on it.
But that's a very interesting shift. I know when it started, it was all about efficiency.
Yes.
And can I do it quicker? Can I do it cheaper? But there's at least definitely a very here and now shift that we're seeing around saying, can you help me improve my quality of decisions?
Yes.
How can I talk to data better? How can I talk to my systems better? The example that's showing. A lot of companies have shown interest, but I agree they're in different stages of maturity.
And I think your point about the movement from let's just talk about how we can do the thing we do today a little bit faster with AI to what we can now make possible, I think that point is so important. Because if you're listening to this discussion and you're thinking that AI is just about taking 3 tasks off my plate, and then what happens when it takes 5 or 10 or 16 tasks off my plate? Do I have a role? Can I create value? What's my impact? Then that feels very scary. But if you think about the second part of the conversation, which is how can AI empower me to make a different decision, a better decision? How can it give me an insight to take an action that I might not even know is available to me? That's an opportunity creation. That is about growth. And I think this shift from efficiency to that opportunity creation is really important. Doesn't mean we're not going to drive lots of efficiency. We've always done that. We will always continue to do that. Organizations have a responsibility to do that. But I think the opportunity to unlock new value creation activities is really the interesting piece.
We spoke about data a little bit, and I was reading an analyst report that went back and said only 4%, I don't know whether it was global data or India data, but it said only 4% of corporates have their data that is AI ready.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? And is that now a huge elephant that needs to be sorted before AI journey begins at companies, or how are the companies going around it?
It's a huge elephant, and it's an elephant because data curation and data governance was a challenge even before the advent of AI. Most of us that have been in this space working with large organizations know that the quality of data, who owns the data, is it well thought out, is it structured, do we know what the tagging is, all of those things. That was a challenge before. And now you're talking about how can I use that data to educate small language models, how can I use that data to do that conversational query that we're talking about. And if you don't have that data well understood, then that last mile is going to be very difficult to unlock and achieve. But here, I've said I'm an optimist, so here's my optimist view. My optimist view is these are challenges we know how to work. These are challenges mature organizations know how to work, certainly challenges that we know how to work in clients that we've worked with, because these are about the fundamentals. This is about infrastructure and capability in order to serve the next generation of technology. So while I think it's a big challenge, it's an elephant, it's one that's going to need to be worked. It's an elephant we'll get moving, to make that analogy not work very well, but it's an elephant we're going to get moving pretty quickly.
And I somehow think even Gen AI might help companies take a leap in terms of cataloging their data, solving their data.
No question.
Hopefully there's a quicker way of solving this, but
Agreed.
It's a big one to solve. PwC itself is a large organization, so many different countries, so many different people, so many different processes. Is there a client zero story that we have, and how is it that we're kind of navigating AI within the larger walls of PwC?
It's a great question. The end of the day, if we believe that AI represents an opportunity for our clients, if I'm sitting through with any of the clients that I've worked with over the years that I know, and hopefully they know and trust me, it doesn't feel very sincere to sit with them and tell them you should do AI and let me know how it works out, because then I'm going to go figure out if I can get value out of it. One of the things that has fueled PwC for so long is this innovation culture, and how do we drive and experiment so that we can learn on ourselves and serve our clients. And that's the client, what we call the client zero story. And I know a lot of the technology organizations are going down the same path. For us, that's how do we create and embed the AI capability in the way that we deliver everything. Now, that doesn't mean we'll go from 0 to 100 in every process and in every delivery model, but we're challenging our people today to look at that and bring it to bear every day. You mentioned Chat PwC. We've now deployed Chat PwC to more than 260,000 people around the network. Chat PwC is not just a chat module, it's actually a sandbox that allows us to bring different models to bear to our people, so that not only can they use it to solve the problem of the day, they can use it as a sandbox to learn what the model capabilities are and how those different models and different tools solve problems differently. And then the other capability is bringing tools like Microsoft Copilot, and we know the important relationship we have with Harvey, the OpenAI enterprise. Those relationships become really, really important because they allow us to deploy those tools at scale inside PwC, so that we can take those learnings on security and responsible use and scaling and how people interact with them. We can bring those lessons to bear not only to improve PwC, but to share with our clients.
For our people here, and actually a lot of companies as well, they still don't have a platform that brings AI for citizens at scale in a secure, responsible way. You want to talk a little bit about this journey of Chat PwC, and must have been for a firm like us with so much of data and so much of sensitivities around data. How did we navigate that in some roadmap there?
It's such a great question. The starting point of that was we knew that we wanted people to be able to access these powerful tools. And I'd love to tell you that when you start out, you know where it will lead you, but there's some amazing benefits that the team have delivered because they're constantly focused on this innovation and development. But the early stage discovery was, can we create a safe and secure environment where the data lives inside the environment? It's not out traveling and educating the models. The models need to be educated, but they should not be educated with proprietary data that's ours or our clients. And how do we make sure that our people can use those in a way that even confidentiality of an event, I mean, we are entrusted with some of the most confidential events that our clients navigate through. We certainly don't want to be exposing that to the internet or to anybody. We've got to take that protection really seriously. That set of small problems that are big problems, but that small set of big problems was the starting point of the Chat PwC journey. Could we create an environment that could do that? And that's what we did. We deployed it in the Azure environment, our environment that we have security and control over. We deployed it in our Azure environment, and we then allowed people to use that to conduct the business of the day. What it demonstrated was providing them more capability was going to open up more possibilities. So we now started to add additional models to that. And at the same time, we've got prompt libraries, we've got capabilities in terms of guidance that are in there, we have guardrails in terms of the outcomes. And I'll give you a very specific example. 10Ks in the US, the SEC 10Ks, which are such a rich source of information. If you go out to the public internets, even to the SEC's databases, you can search that content, but you can't have the kind of discovery conversation that's really, really impactful in the way that we advise businesses. We were able to put that into our environment, put that data into our environment in a controlled, structured way, and give our people the ability to query that so that they could get better, more accurate, more consistent answers when they were being confronted with questions and problems from our clients. That's the kind of thing that the Chat PwC platform allows us to do. And it is now one of the most widely deployed and most consistently applied set of tools across the PwC network.
So, at the end of the year, you would release the AI predictions for 2025, and only time will tell how true they were or how accurate they were. But what's your take for customers in terms of what you expect in 2025 for AI?
Well, one of the AI predictions was, and I'll go by memory, the words were more eloquent in the report than what I'll recall, but the gist was, if you don't have an AI strategy that's coupled into your strategy, then you don't have a strategy. AI is going to be so important to businesses that you have to understand what these implications are from a technology perspective on the value creation activities and the management activities of the enterprise. So I think that's a really fundamental one. And that one, by the way, as you know, Manpreet, that's not a new one. We used to say often in digital transformation in the last generation of this, that if you have a strategy and it says, asterisk, we're going to do this all in a digital way, see page 55, you don't really have a strategy, right? You have to integrate it into understanding how these activities and these objectives will be served by the emerging technology. So I think that's a really fundamental one. The second one that we said is the agentic workforce. And so one of the observations we made is that the workforce will double but it's not going to all be headcount. It's going to be the joint capability of people plus agents that is actually going to create a much more powerful workforce. Now, there's other predictions in the report, so people should go check that out. But I think those two fundamental ones really start to paint a picture of what organizations should be thinking about as we get into 25.
And do you see 2025 the year where companies will begin to start going beyond, like I said, efficiency to effective decision making, to potentially sort of pushing the boundaries of business models? Is that something that you begin to start seeing with large companies?
I think the best organizations will do that. They'll do it thoughtfully, but I think they will do that. And I'm certain there will be a lot of organizations that will spend 25 in the world of efficiency, and that, again, that's okay. But I think the leading organizations are going to be the ones that say, does this AI capability, the platforms that we're deploying, the technology tools that are available to us, whether they're tools that we're developing in concert with the technology partners, or they're publicly available tools, or they're important vendor partners to us, does this suite of capability unlock something new? And the other piece that I think is equally important is, does this suite of capability cause us to rethink something we've done before and allow us to do it in a completely different way, not just a more efficient way? And that's the idea that it's not about, can I do a 10-step process in 7 steps? It's the question of whether or not I need to execute that process at all in a world that's AI powered. And I think that kind of vision, and getting that vision not only in the C-suite, but getting that vision into the operating leaders across the business enterprise and really encouraging that experimentation, that innovation, that discovery, and recognizing that not every idea is going to work out, but encouraging that discovery so that you can stay ahead of the competition, stay ahead of the market, and stay at the right part of the leading edge.
A couple of questions that keep getting asked to me, when I'm talking about companies, and sometimes you have situations where the company's CEO is very, very committed towards the AI agenda. But the next in lines are possibly a little scattered, and that's where the change begins to be a little different. A top-down push towards an AI-led thinking versus a bottoms-up way of making an AI-first thinking, or a hybrid. I mean, how do you see, what's your advice to the companies there?
I think it has to be both. And it's interesting, I'm not even sure it's a hybrid so much as you need to execute both strategies, right? I think it's a 2X strategy, not a 1.5 strategy of that, right? And there's a lot of research in even the previous technology innovations that talked about the ability to move organizations from the top down. Even the best leadership teams can only accomplish so much. And I used to say that organizations suffered from a resistance to change in the middle of the organizations, the management layers of the organization. But I had a client one time explain to me, and she said, Joe, people aren't just resistant to change. They just want to know whatever change it is that they're making, that the deal works for them as well as the organization. And that's why I think the bottoms up is just as important as the top down. We owe people in our organizations an understanding of where we're going and what it means to them. We owe them investments in their skills and their capabilities. Now there's a handshake. They've got to lean in, they've got to do the right thing for the organization, they've got to make sure they're serving clients and customers as well. But when you get that right, you can kind of crack that problem in the middle of organizations, demonstrating the value of change is about growth, it's not just about efficiency. And then the really, really powerful part is when you can create that trust across the organization, then the individuals that make up your team, they're going to lean in with you. They're going to bring you the very best innovations. And we've been seeing that in our Client Zero story. It's the people of PwC that bring the most amazing ideas to the table. I'd love if it was you and I. Every once in a while we get a pretty good idea, but it's the team that unlocks the value because hopefully they know what we're trying to achieve together.
Let me just double click on this one a little bit more. So let's say if there's a company that says I've got $10 million to put on AI, and I'm starting the story right now, how do you see, and I hear the 2X strategy, but the division between, do I get a corner office to begin to start bringing AI to life? Or do I start spending a big chunk of that in terms of bringing the culture up to a speed where I start getting a whole bunch of ideas in? Is it a 50-50 split? Is it a 40-60 split? I know the answers will be different for different industries.
It depends, my favorite answer. But I do think it needs to be both. I do think it's incredibly important. Obviously, I have a bit of a bias as the Global Chief AI Officer. I have a bit of a bias on this question. But I do think it's important to have designated responsible leadership that are thinking every day, waking up for your organization in the C-suite about how is Gen AI and AI broadly going to change my organization. I just think that the moment requires that kind of executive sponsorship. So if you had a bucket and you're trying to figure out where to allocate the wallet, I think that's an important allocation of the wallet. And then I think the second piece that is really important is the platform tools that we've talked about. How do I get it into the hands of my people? Again, in a responsible way. Maybe it's a vendor tool, maybe it's an enterprise tool. But how do I start to really give people the opportunity to dig in, experiment, innovate, discover, learn, because that learning is going to make the strategic piece possible.
Interesting. Just another thing that keeps intriguing me, given the amount of travel you do and you cover the whole world, you've got a large network. How do you see the story for AI, the adoption of AI change from west to east, from north to south? I mean, is there a certain pattern that you see?
The pattern that I see is one of leadership. And again, it goes to this question of the top-down and bottoms-up, but the reality is that when the leadership tone is there, regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of what culture you're having the conversation, regardless of what language you're having the conversation, regardless of what time zone or hemisphere you're having the conversation, when leadership commits, demonstrates, speaks to the teams about the what and the why, then you see adoption and activity. When leadership's quiet, or leadership's hesitant, or leadership's cautious, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you see a different challenge. Now having said that, I will tell you that different regions of the world are clearly investing differently and setting different tones. So now convert it to policy and regulatory leadership and government leadership. That can have as big an impact on that question as organizational leadership.
And the regulations will only keep evolving, and that'll change the game.
They're going to keep changing the game.
Like it's India is right now thinking about, yep, absolutely. So just, thanks for a very wide spanning perspective on a whole bunch of things. But if I were to ask you for one advice for people who are listening to you in the world of AI, who want to be more relevant as individuals and as companies, what's the one thing that you would sort of...
I would say learn every day. Allocate some of your day. We all wake up, we start our routines, we do our commutes, we make our phone calls, return our emails, or whatever it is that we do. And it's easy to push the learning to the last thing. I would say push the learning to the first thing. The pace is so fast, the innovation is so profound, that for any of us to stay as close as we can to at pace, because I think most of us are going to feel uncomfortable all the time, you've got to allocate the time. That would be my first bit of advice.
Fantastic. And while AI can do a whole bunch of autonomous things, there's a lot of interesting things in life that AI will not be able to do.
That's right.
Thank you. This is really
helpful.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation to join you all.
Thank you. Cheers.
Appreciate it.